Tonight, Donald Trump's attack on the United Nations and Europe as he delivers a lecture about migration and climate change. In a meandering 57-minute-long speech, he warns Europe is going to hell because of unchecked immigration and accuses the UN of failing in its purpose.
It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out.
In the past few hours, he's held meetings about the two wars in Gaza and Ukraine and signaled a big shift in his approach to the conflict in Europe. Donald Trump says Kyiv should aim to seize back all of its territory from Moscow. Coming up, I'll get reaction to that from the Czech president and ask him whether NATO should shoot down Russian jets violating its airspace. Plus, the British activist today reunited with his family after 10 years in prison for protesting against the Egyptian government. And the celebrity campaign that forced Disney to change its mind about Jimmy Kimmel will be live in Los Angeles. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. I'm Yalda Hakim, live from New York. And what a difference a few years makes. Rewind back to 2018, and Donald Trump was greeted with mocking laughter by world leaders here in the United Nations. He's boasted he's achieved more in 2 years than any other president. This was their response. Have a look.
Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
But things have changed now. This time round, he railed against the UN's very existence, against what he called the global warming con, and warned leaders in Europe they were being, in his words, invaded by what he called a force of illegal aliens. His repeated claims to have ended 7 wars in 7 months was met, this time, with a strained, uneasy silence. And away from the bluster and the hyperbole, he did express his desire for peace in Gaza and Ukraine. Just have a listen.
We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one?
Extraordinary, him saying they're funding the war against themselves. He spoke for nearly an hour, way past his allotted 15 minutes, and afterwards an even bigger shift. He now says Ukraine should aim to seize back all of its territory from Russia. Just to have a listen to how the Ukrainian president responded when our US correspondent Mark Stone asked him about it.
Just tell us how significant is this post by the president? How significant is it?
Madame Annalena Baerbock is waiting.
It's a big shift by President Trump.
Shift. This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Well, tonight we'll sift through Donald Trump's words and assess their likely impact. Let's bring in our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, who's here with me live. Extraordinary, really, Dom, when we think about it. You and I were standing here about 3 or 4 hours ago listening to Donald Trump give this long-winded speech, and we were told it would be this big foreign policy speech, and we thought, where was it? I don't know, did he forget to do it, or was he convinced by Zelensky once they'd met?
It's a real mystery, isn't it? And in this speech, which he has now upstaged, he's upstaged his own speech with the headlines he's going to make with this Truth Social post. He did not really talk about Ukraine very much. He talked about it in the sense he said that he's prepared to slap new sanctions, heavier sanctions on Russia if the Europeans stop buying Russian oil, but no hint at all of what appears to be a dramatic and significant U-turn in the way he's responding and dealing with Russia and Ukraine. In this Truth Social post, he said, after getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it's causing Russia, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. This is the president who said to Zelensky back in February in the Oval Office, you don't have any cards. You shouldn't pick fights that you can't win. Always really emphasised the fact that Russia seemed to be the dominant force in this war, and very unfairly said Ukraine shouldn't have fought back effectively because it's just not strong enough to fight back against Russia. But the crucial thing here, he says, not only does he think that Ukraine can take back its own territory, but would also be able to take back, maybe even go further, he says, than that. Putin and Russia are in big economic trouble, and this is the time for Ukraine to act. In any event, I wish both countries will continue to supply weapons to NATO, for NATO to do what they want with them. So he's not saying America's going to support Ukraine, but he's saying he's going to continue supplying NATO, but he thinks that Ukraine can win. Now, always with Trump, you have to put a lot of qualification in. I spoke to a senior Western diplomat. His eyebrows were certainly raised by this, and there's a buzz around the media village here now, people saying, have you seen this? So I showed it to him, and he said, you know, that looks interesting, but don't forget we've seen moments, for instance, with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, where it looked like Trump was about to do one thing and he did the other. But there has been this argument, Yalda, as we know, all the way through, about how Trump is responding to Russia. And one of the arguments is he is slowly shifting like a super tanker to the European side of the argument. Possibly something has shifted this afternoon, either his meeting with Zelensky or some kind of intelligence he's seen about the Russian economy that maybe makes Russia look like a loser now in this war. He doesn't like losers. Certainly his analysis is shifting, and it seems the way he's responding to this war is shifting as well. As he said to Mark Stone there, this is significant. It looks like a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, just last week when I was with President Zelensky, he expressed his deep frustration with the US president, and I thought, here we go again. He's going to criticize the US president, and we're going to find ourselves where we did in February when we saw that big blow up. But as you say, this is a president who prides himself on being unpredictable and coming out with these sorts of statements. We'll have to wait and see where it ends, and we'll keep you there, Dom, because we've got more that we want to discuss with you. But those developments happened in the past half hour or so, as Dom was saying. Let's just look back now at how Donald Trump addressed world leaders here today. Mark Stone reports.
We knew he would be here to provoke and to poke. That is now proudly his way. But as the American president arrived at the UN building, it wasn't entirely clear where he would choose to point his finger. In the General Assembly chamber, there was anticipation. Would his ire be for Russia and the war he can't solve, or maybe movement on Gaza? Instead, it was a broken escalator on his way in. And in the chamber, a broken auto cue, which provided the gags for his initial thrust.
The teleprompter is not working. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter.
He delivered a full-throttle assault on the institution he was addressing.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential.
He framed it with the tone of a campaign speech as his success versus the UN's failure.
I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal.
The speech was a familiar weave, but with no real news-making thread. On the environment and climate change, there was more than anticipated, but entirely on brand.
It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know?
He chose not to recognize that the UN is only the sum of its parts, a body that relies on consensus and is hampered by vetoes. His language will resonate with an aligned proportion of conservatives globally, language that reflects his view that this chamber, this body, has become a useless liberal institution. He then weaved to immigration.
Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
There was much less on the big geopolitical challenges. On Gaza, he had no solution, despite being the only one with the power to grip the challenge. But nor did he back Israeli annexation of the West Bank, as some had feared.
Instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now.
On Ukraine, contrition that it's been much harder than he thought. And here his focus was, with some logic, on Europe. Stop buying Russian oil, he said.
They're funding the war against themselves.
But then, in a separate one-on-one meeting with the Ukrainian leader, a new significant position from Trump.
Do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do.
If that happened, it would represent the perilous Russia-NATO clash that the West has sought so hard to avoid. And from European foreign ministers, hesitation.
So the Netherlands firmly supports shooting down Russian jets in NATO airspace?
Well, we don't support shooting down, but we are deadly against illegal infringements into our airspace, and Russia needs to understand that and stay away.
A key pressure on Europe now, Germany in particular, is to stop buying Russian energy. But the German foreign minister wouldn't be drawn.
Foreign Minister Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy?
Thank you very much.
Can we just establish whether Germany will stop buying Russian energy?
We're not giving into this now.
The President was very clear that it's not a good idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you just confirm that you will stop buying Russian energy? Why are you buying Russian energy, sir?
It is a fractured world, no question. And from this global body, little unity, no answers. Mark Stone, Sky News in New York.
And we know in the last few minutes that President Trump has been meeting with Muslim majority leaders. No doubt top of the agenda is the war in Gaza and how to resolve that. He's now aligned himself very firmly with President Zelensky and NATO. We'll have to wait and see what comes out of that particular meeting. But I'm told we do have images of that meeting. Let's just have a look.
Very important meeting. It's going to be a meeting with great leaders from a very important part of our planet, the Middle East, and we want to end the war in Gaza. We're going to end it. We're going to end it. Maybe we can end it right now. But they're respected all over the world. They're respected by me in the Oval Office, I can tell you that. They're respected by the United States, and we're here to see if we can get the hostages back and get the war over and get back to life in the Middle East, which is a beautiful life, but it's much more beautiful without wars, right? So I really greatly respect the fact that you're here, and we're going to get it done. We're going to have a meeting. If we can agree to something, I'm going to see the people in Israel, including Bibi, and we're going to get something done because it's gone on too long, and we want it to end, and we want to get those hostages back too. We've gotten most of them back. Right now they have 20 hostages and 38 dead bodies. And the parents of those young people that were killed and are right now in body bags, they want their son or daughter back just as much as they wanted them as though they were alive. We have to get them back. We have to get the 38 back, and we have to get the 20 back. And I think we'll be able to do it. This is the group that can do it. More than any other group in the world, this is the group that can do it. So it's an honor, King, to be with you, and we appreciate it. Tamim, the job you've done is incredible, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, if you don't mind, on behalf of everyone, first of all, thank you very much for hosting such an important meeting at such an important time. I think I will just make it very brief. The only reason you are here is to stop the war and bring the hostages back. And we count on you and your leadership as well to end this war and to help the people of Gaza. The situation is very, very, very bad there. So we are here to meet and to do everything we can to stop this war and to bring the hostages back. So once again, Mr. President, thank you very much for hosting everybody.
Well, and also a great speech you made today. I watched it. A really great speech. Thank you very much. And you too, my friend. Great speech. You did a great job pounding on that table. I said, how would you like to deal with him when you left? It's not easy. You did a great job. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We're going to work very hard on this. This is my most important meeting. I've had important meetings. I don't want to insult anybody. that we met with. We met with just 32 meetings here. But this is the one that's very important to me because we're going to end something that should have probably never started. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad.
That was President Trump in the last few minutes there with Muslim-majority leaders having that round table in what he says is the hope that they can somehow resolve the war in Gaza to end the ongoing crisis there. And you could hear the Qatari emir addressing President Trump and saying to him that the situation is terrible on the ground. President Trump talked about the fact that this war should not have started and the number of hostages that remain in Israel, notably Benjamin Netanyahu, obviously not in that room. I'm just going to bring in our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn. You know, Dom, just looking at what has developed in the last hour, Donald Trump now on some kind of momentum and roll. If we put that speech that he gave almost 6 hours to one side where people weren't quite sure what the message was, the message since then in these meetings is, Zelensky, I stand with you. And now with these Arab leaders, you know, people often say about Donald Trump, it's the last person he spoke to. So these U-turns are made based on who he last spoke to. Today, it's Ursula von der Leyen and President Zelensky and these Arab leaders. But it's unclear whether the policy will remain the same in the next week or so.
Absolutely. And he's also someone who likes to be the centre of attention, and he's grabbed attention all day with his speech that went on for 4 times as long as expected, with this extraordinary Truth Social post about Ukraine, and then with this meeting about Gaza. With Gaza, he is aware that one of probably the key foreign policy achievement of his first term in office, the Abraham Accords, where the UAE and Bahrain normalised relations with Israel, that is in trouble. That is at stake because of his unqualified support of Israel, and he knows that the region is deeply worried about his support of that, but also his assumed support of Israel's decision to attack Hamas negotiators in Qatar, in the capital of the Arab state, the Gulf state of Qatar. So he's fighting to keep that legacy, but also there's a sense that he's running out of patience with Benjamin Netanyahu. He's reportedly said to him, look, you've got one last chance. You can go into Gaza City. If you can't finish off Hamas, then we've got to have a ceasefire. So a sense that he's running out of patience, and we'll have to see what he decides with those Arab leaders and leaders from other Muslim-majority nations who are certainly saying to him, this has got to end, as are European allies. He obviously yesterday in greater numbers recognised Palestine, partly in protest about what's happening in Gaza. But what they have in common, he has in common with that, is he's also losing patience, it seems, with Vladimir Putin. And just looking at this Truth Social post a bit more closely, it's really fascinating. He's delivering a more withering assessment of Russia's ability to fight than we've ever seen before. He says that Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. This is not distinguishing Russia. In fact, it is very much making them look like a paper tiger. And he says when the people living in Moscow and great cities and towns find out what's really going on with this war, the fact that it's almost impossible for them to get gasoline through the long lines that are being formed, then there's a possibility of Ukraine fighting back, to paraphrase what he's saying, and also saying that not just fight back, but also possibly take more, not just to go beyond its borders. So there's a sense, I think, that Zelensky's influenced him, von der Leyen, the other leaders he's met here, but I think also there's a sense that he thinks Russia is losing. And I think it's significant to also point out that since August, new intelligence is telling us, publicly, this is information that 16 out of Russia's 38 oil refineries have been hit and damaged by Ukraine. They are now taking a really punishing effect on Russia's ability to produce and refine oil. And I think it's significant he's talking about the economic impact of this war as well. So it does feel like a genuine shift in his position. But of course, with Trump, you've always got to qualify it, say he's unpredictable, who knows what will happen next. But this does feel like a significant moment in this war.
Yeah, 6 weeks ago, the red carpet rolled out for Vladimir Putin, in Alaska. And now you look at that Truth Social post, it could have been written by Volodymyr Zelensky. So a lot has happened in the last hour. We'll come back to today's events at the United Nations later in the program. But before that speech, it was President Trump's claim claims, and we heard him yesterday say this, that autism had the world talking. That's what he was talking about last night in Washington. He said there'd been a meteoric rise in the neurodevelopment condition and suggested a link with Tylenol, the common painkiller known as paracetamol in the UK, that's been denounced as unfounded by doctors and scientists, with the UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting urging pregnant women to disregard the president's remarks. Here's our health correspondent Laura Bundock.
Liz Bell is 9 months pregnant and due any day. It's her first baby, and she's taken paracetamol at different points of her pregnancy.
One of the things that you are always told you can have to manage pain relief is paracetamol. So for that to now be thrown into doubts, and for lots of women around the world to now question whether they can have that pain relief I think it's awful.
Has it engaged the head now?
Like all new mums, Liz has a lot of information to navigate, but was furious when she heard Trump linking autism to paracetamol.
I was really, really angry. I was angry because I knew myself before I'd even checked, because it's Trump, that there wouldn't be enough scientific evidence behind what he was saying. And then when I did do my own research, I saw exactly that. So I was angry that this misinformation was being spread on such a wide global stage.
Her anger is shared by many. April Austin teaches antenatal classes. She's also autistic and has a child with autism.
You come out and you say, oh, I have autism, people tend to look at you a little bit differently, and the favourite one I get is, you don't look like you're autistic. There is already so much misinformation and a lack of research and understanding of what autism is, and this just pushes the stigma onto autism being a problem.
Trump's advice has been robustly refuted by the health secretary.
I would just say to people watching, don't pay any attention whatsoever to what Donald Trump says about medicine.
A bit, yeah.
In fact, don't even take my word for it as a politician.
Okay.
Listen to British doctors, British scientists, the NHS.
And from NHS leaders, disbelief, anger and outrage.
We've done extensive research. We really understand the science behind this, and there is no evidence at all that paracetamol is anything other than safe. And in fact, we would encourage women who've been prescribed paracetamol to keep taking it, because we only prescribe medicines in pregnancy for very good reasons.
Experts from the UK, Europe and globally have united in response. Paracetamol is safe, and the far bigger risk here, believing President Trump's extraordinary rhetoric. Laura Bundock, Sky News, Milton Keynes.
Well, Dr. Deborah Huri was Chief Medical Officer at the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. She quit last month, declaring that her role had been reduced to rubber stamps under the US Health Secretary RFK Jr. Thank you so much, Dr. Huri, for joining us here on the program. I just want to get your reaction to, the statements that the president made yesterday, the concern that it has now caused with medical practitioners all over the world. I guess in many ways, given the position you were in, you probably aren't that surprised.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, the president is getting his medical advice from Secretary Kennedy, who has said you shouldn't take medical advice from him. I certainly think it's important to look at the causes of autism. There's been some studies about Tylenol that show there might be an association, and there's been some that show that there's not an association. And the most well-done study that looked at genetics and siblings did not show an association. So I agree with what you broadcast, that, from NHS and others, you should continue to use acetaminophen with caution, as you would with any medication during pregnancy.
Dr. Huri, just give us a sense. I mean, you worked in that department alongside the Health Secretary, RFK Jr. His views have often been controversial. In terms of the science that was coming in, was he taking it seriously?
Unfortunately, and this is one of the things I mentioned when I testified to the Senate last week, is I never had the opportunity to brief Secretary Kennedy. Myself and the other senior career scientists at the CDC never briefed the secretary, which was very unusual from any other Secretary of Health and Human Services that we worked with. So I don't know where he's getting his information.
So in terms of you know, your colleagues and you, what was your role? I mean, if you're not advising him and if you're not passing on the science and the information and the data that you're collating, what was happening?
So we certainly would pass information on, and we were responsible for much of the guidance that came out, you know, across communities in the United States. But that conversation up to the secretary, including during, you know, our measles outbreak, was unidirectional. You know, we might pass information to him, but we never had a conversation with him, despite offering to do briefings for him.
So when we hear things like Tylenol or paracetamol is linked to autism in pregnancy, this information isn't necessarily coming from the CDC itself. It's RFK Jr. sort of passing this on to the president himself.
This work was not underway when I was at CDC. I certainly left a few weeks ago, so can't comment on if it happened between now and then. But I don't believe a study was generated in 3 weeks to produce that from the agency. I think it was likely the one meta-analysis that came out over the summer. But again, there's been many studies that have shown otherwise, that Tylenol is safe.
What are your concerns now when you see these sorts of things, you know, whether it's about Tylenol or about in pregnancy causing autism, or things like the vaccines around measles and mumps? Where do you see things going if it continues along this trajectory?
I think it's very concerning. I think one of the things we need to focus on is the secretary's talked about gold standard science and radical transparency. I think it should be more than just a slogan. To me, that means when you say something, you have the data and the science behind it. Ideally, the public has had an opportunity to review and comment on it before something is said. We shouldn't have an assumption or something not supported by evidence and data that can certainly change clinical practice. And along those lines, you know, I think it's really important to ensure that what we are saying is grounded in science and not misinformation. And we've seen that with the secretary talking about the measles vaccine in the past, that it had fetal parts and it killed people, and those are not true.
Dr. Houri, we're really grateful for your time. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Well, back to one of our top stories, and we saw Donald Trump meeting leaders from Jordan, Qatar and Turkey just now, amongst other Muslim-majority leaders. He was expected to present his vision for ending the war. We'll hear from the Palestinian Deputy Ambassador here in a moment. But first, just to have a listen to how the US President's vision for Gaza has changed over the past few months. Have a look.
Gaza is interesting. It's a phenomenal location. On the sea, best weather, you know, everything's good. It's like some beautiful things could be done with it. If we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes and where they can be happy and not be shot, not be killed, not be knifed to death like what's happening in Gaza. I'm committed to buying and owning Gaza. As far as us rebuilding it, we may give it to other states in the Middle East to build sections of it. Other people may do it through our auspices. I think it could be a diamond. It could be an absolute tremendous asset for the Middle East.
And Mr. President, take it under what authority? It is sovereign territory.
Under the U.S. authority.
And Mr. President, would you seek to personally develop property in Gaza after this happens?
No.
Difficult work.
What about the president's plans to expel Palestinians out of Gaza? Are you discussing that with him and giving him your...
Nobody's expelling any Palestinians. I don't know. Who are you with?
I'm with Voice of America, sir.
Oh, no wonder. That's an international problem. It's not a U.S. problem. It's an international problem. And we're giving a lot of money and a lot of food and a lot of everything.
As President Trump over the course of the last 8 months or so. Well, with me now is Ambassador Majid Bamia, Deputy Permanent Observer of the State of Palestine to the UN. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us here on the programme. A lot to get through. Let's start with the summit yesterday and the recognition of the State of Palestine by a number of Western states, France, Australia, the UK, Canada, amongst many others. I just want to get your reaction to that.
First, it's a reminder that we are entitled to liberty, that we are a people that has suffered from the denial of our rights for so long, and it is extremely meaningful. And it doesn't come in a vacuum, so it's not a symbolic gesture. It comes as part of a mobilization to save Gaza, to save Palestine, and to save peace in our region. What France did, what the UK did, what other countries did, is to say we will not allow the destruction of the Palestinian people or of the two-state solution, the only path to peace.
But in terms of whether it actually means anything on the ground, when we look at the destruction of Gaza, the ongoing onslaught by Israel, does it not feel symbolic in many ways? Because, I mean, even Marco Rubio in the last day has said this means nothing until the US isn't involved, until Israel doesn't recognize the state of Palestine and a two-state solution.
Well, we want the US to be involved. And Israel is very clear, this government, about its intentions. Netanyahu said again, I'm against the Palestinian state. I will never allow a Palestinian state. So does he call the shots, or the rest of the world has obligations and has a responsibility? We need to show voluntarism, not stand idly by till the situation improves. That will never work. And so it's not only recognition, it is measures to deter these kind of policies and to answer them. That's what the New York Declaration brings about. It's a vision about how the Palestinian Authority can take over in Gaza in a situation where Israel withdraws instead of trying to displace our population and to seize our land and to annex it and to colonize it, also as we see in the West Bank. It is a vision where you would have hostages released, prisoners released, where you have an end of the occupation-made famine, and where you would have finally the ability to bring in the region, the United States, and the rest of the world as actors for actual progress towards Palestinian independence and a two-state solution and regional integration for Israel if it chooses to end its occupation, but it shouldn't be a choice. They have an obligation to end this occupation.
Right now, the vision feels so far away from reality on the ground. In fact, the Israelis say there will be repercussions as a result of this. They're thinking about, the idea of annexation of the West Bank. Is this something that is of grave concern to you?
Of course it is extremely grave. They are doing annexation on the ground effectively. They are dispossessing communities as we speak. And therefore, we cannot ignore this reality. And that's why we say you need concrete measures to deter them, to stop them. As you would do with any country in the world, this idea that Israel is different, that nothing can be done but wait till it finally decides it is time to end this occupation. And it is doing, of course, horrible things to the Palestinians, but it's also very bad for Israel and the Israeli people as we move forward.
Would you then urge, the French president, the British Prime Minister, to put more pressure on Donald Trump, or at least impose further sanctions on Israel?
We want them to take measures as regards Israel until Israel fully complies with its obligations. But they say there's expectation from the Palestinian side. We have obligations, we have commitments, we are undertaking them. We are convinced there's only a peaceful path that leads to our independence and statehood. They are trying to prove us right, to show to our people that effectively this peaceful choice is the right one. And we hope that the US administration will arrive to the same conclusion. We are a partner for peace, and they need to empower us in this undertaking. And this Israeli government, its policies are destructive for Israel. What they're doing to the Palestinian people is unacceptable. We are not lesser beings, and that has to be stopped. And President Trump said he wants to end the war in Gaza. Ceasefire saves lives. The only way you save the lives of 2 million Palestinians, the only way you save the lives of the 20 Israeli hostages is ceasefire. The 2 years of destruction are just bringing death and devastation.
Ambassador, do you believe, as part of the Palestinian leadership, that you have let down your people as well? That they don't have the kind of leadership that they deserve?
So again, we have to demonstrate to our people that the peaceful path we've chosen can stop what Israel is doing, can stop and end the occupation. And Israel will do everything to make us fail, to make the Palestinian Authority fail. It wants its collapse. Netanyahu was ready to allow money in for Hamas at the same time where he was blocking money from the Palestinian Authority. So we are very clear. We are telling our people this. We believe our people want a peaceful alternative. They are eager, especially in Gaza, to see this horrors end. Their children are dying before their eyes. They want peace. And you have to believe us. We want peace. We're acting for it. Judge us on our actions. We haven't killed a single Israeli in 2 years, while Israel was killing 65,000 Palestinians.
Well, they would accuse Hamas
Hamas killed, and we have said we denounce the killing of any civilian, Palestinian or Israeli, and on the 7th of October, the killing and taking of hostages by Hamas is condemnable. So we are very clear in our positions regarding that. But the Palestinian government did not kill Israelis. The Israeli government kills Palestinians. So we are a partner for peace. The US administration must help us deliver at a partner in peace in Israel, so we are able to come together. We are appealing to the US administration with Saudi Arabia and regional actors, with France and European and the international community, 142 countries coming together to send a message. We have a plan. We have a path to peace. This is the only alternative. The rest, this violence, it's an impasse. They can continue down this road. We've been at it for 80 years. Isn't it time for coexistence? Coexistence requires our existence, the recognition of our rights, and peace for Palestinians and Israelis, and security for Palestinians and Israelis.
Ambassador, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You're watching The World. Next up on the program, Jimmy Kimmel's comeback from a contentious suspension will be live in Los Angeles.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back to New York. I'm Yalda Hakim. Let's go to Los Angeles now. And Jimmy Kimmel is tonight preparing to return to his late-night TV studio almost a week after he was suspended. Disney-owned ABC took him off air after he made fiercely criticized remarks about the assassination of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. The suspension was supposed to be indefinite, but it was lifted yesterday. Well, let's bring in our U.S. correspondent Martha Kellner, who's outside the Jimmy Kimmel live studio in Los Angeles. And Martha, I mean, what an about turn this is.
Yeah, it certainly is, and huge anticipation tonight, Yalda, ahead of Jimmy Kimmel's return to the airwaves. As a reminder, you were reflecting, he was taken off air last Wednesday after comments he made during the course of his show, the Jimmy Kimmel Show, about the alleged assassin of the conservative activist Charlie Kirk. It was characterised by ABC, the broadcaster of his show, and the parent company Disney, as an indefinite suspension. But I think a lot of people thought that was just a cute way of saying that Kimmel had been fired. So it surprised a lot of people when they announced yesterday that less than a week later his show would be coming back on air. And we're expecting in the next couple of hours the live studio audience for the Jimmy Kimmel Show to begin lining up outside here. We're not sure just yet quite how much Jimmy Kimmel will reflect on the furore of the past week, but he almost certainly will address the political fallout. That much can be gleaned from a post that he made on Instagram in the last hour. He posted a picture of himself together with Norman Lear, who was a famed TV producer, a close friend of Kimmel. He died back in 2023, aged 101, but Lear was a known progressive activist. He described himself as being on the enemies list of the then Republican President Richard Nixon. Kimmel captioned that photo saying, "Missing this guy today." We don't know whether Jimmy Kimmel will have celebrity guests. He usually does. If he does, we don't know who they will be. But not everyone in America will be able to watch the Jimmy Kimmel Show tonight, because at least 25% of the local ABC stations have opted not to show the Kimmel Show tonight. Instead, they'll carry recorded news broadcasts. But as I say, a huge amount of excitement here in Hollywood and across the US to hear just what Jimmy Kimmel says this evening.
Yeah, indeed. I am sure they're expecting high ratings tonight. Martha, thank you very much. Now, the family of Egyptian British activist Alaa Abdel Fattah are hailing what they call an exceptionally kind day after his pardon and release. Al-Fattah had spent most of the past 12 years locked up after his initial arrest in 2014 for taking part in an unauthorized protest and allegedly assaulting a police officer. He's been reunited with family and friends at home in Cairo, including his 69-year-old mother, Layla Souef, who'd previously gone on hunger strike and lost 35 kilograms in her campaign to free her son. With us now is Alaa Abdel Fattah's aunt, Agdaf Souef. Thank you so much, Ms. Souef, for joining us here on the program. Over the years, I've spoken to different family members, Alaa's sisters. At one point, I spoke to his mum. They really campaigned hard for his freedom, and that freedom has finally been achieved today.
Indeed it has. And one of them was just saying that last night was the first night he'd slept in his bed in his house for 11 years. And that's a remarkable thing, and we feel it very, very deeply.
We're just looking at some of those images of the reunion. Just talk us through what this moment means for your family, your sister, your nieces, and Alaa.
Well, you know, when you have a family member in prison, it affects everything. It's not even casting a shadow. It's as if a part of every event is missing. If you have a birthday, if you have a funeral, if anything at all is lacking, because somebody is lacking, and that's apart from all the worry about him, and apart from all the anger at the injustice, and apart from just always trying to work out what's going to happen, plus the whole business, the travail of the going to prison, the food, the laundry, the financial cost. It's an enormous thing, and our family has had it for 11 years. Alet's father died while he was in prison. His grandfather, my father, died while he was in prison. His son was born while he was in prison. His son is now 13, and Alet has not been able to be there for him, and this is a great sorrow for him. So it's just been It's affected everything and everything.
Did you think that? Did you think that this moment would finally come?
Yeah, you have to think that. I mean, you really just think two things in tandem all the time, because you have to believe that this moment will come, and you do. But on the other hand, you also at the same time fear that this belief is just wishful thinking and a way of carrying on and not being too disheartened. So you're always living with the two thoughts at the same time, really. And of course, that became more and more pressing and more difficult in the last few months, as we seemed constantly getting to our goal.
And just briefly, I've got about a minute to go, but why do you think now?
Well, Alaa finished his actual sentence a year ago, last September, and when he didn't come out of prison, his mother, Layla, went on hunger strike, and she was on hunger strike for 10 months. And we have campaigned hard and continuously in both Egypt and the UK, and we have had a lot of sympathy and support around us. And so basically, the moment that we've worked for has finally come.
Okay, Ms. Swaif, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. We're just going to go briefly to the UN General Assembly, where the British Foreign Secretary is speaking at the moment, Yvette Cooper. Let's just have a quick listen in.
Continues to choose war. He has rejected calls for a meaningful ceasefire. He has refused even to meet President Zelensky in a neutral venue. And Putin's strategy includes the forced deportation, indoctrination, and militarization of children. It includes the intensifying of targets against civilians, strikes on Ukrainian cities and critical infrastructure, on families as they sleep in their beds at night. Civilian casualties have risen nearly 40%, with children killed in playgrounds, diplomatic premises and government buildings damaged, hospitals and schools destroyed. And these are not accidents of war. They are the result of a cruel strategy targeting the people and communities of Ukraine. But anyone who knows Ukrainians knows that this will never succeed, because their determination to hold on to their freedom, to protect their families, their nation, far exceeds Russia's ability to take those things away. And indeed, what we have seen is Ukraine repeatedly undermine Russia's military goals, so that despite the huge Russian mobilization attempts in the last 3 years, their overall impact on their military goals has been minimal. In this war that they started, their losses are now 20 times higher than were Soviet losses in Afghanistan. In this war that they are continuing to pursue, they're struggling to recruit. And in some areas, their stocks are so low they have resorted to using military equipment from the 1950s. What is this for? Because as Ukraine stands firm against Russia, the United Kingdom stands firm with Ukraine. We know that Ukraine's security is our security, and all of us depend on upholding the UN Charter. We know that Russia exports interference, disinformation and instability well beyond Ukraine, from cyber attacks in Moldova to the deployment of mercenaries in the Sahel. Russia's actions seek to undermine democracies, fuel conflict and spread instability far beyond Europe's borders. And in recent weeks, we've seen...
You're listening there to the Foreign Secretary speaking at the UN Security Council, focusing primarily on the war in Ukraine and talking about Vladimir Putin's ambitions. In the last hour or so, we've seen and heard Donald Trump, through a Truth Social post, make a reversal on his position in Ukraine and talk about the fact that Ukraine could win this conflict and win back the territory it has lost with the support of NATO. Let's bring in the Czech President, Petr Pavel, who is here with me now. Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. And we've spoken spoken to you in the past about the war in Ukraine. But first of all, I want to get your reaction because when we've previously spoken, you've almost echoed what Donald Trump said before he said that perhaps some compromises, some concessions needed to be made. Today we're hearing from Donald Trump saying that actually Ukraine could win back the territory with the right support.
Frankly, I am a little bit cautious about different statements because they have to be supported by action. To push Russia to the table, we really need to exert maximum possible economic and financial pressure. Military assistance is necessary on the ground for Ukrainians to hold the territory, not to lose more. To reverse the war, it would need many more resources, not only financial but also equipment, hardware, but also manpower. And this is the issue that Ukraine is lacking most. Unlike Russia, their human resources are limited and they are stretched over beyond the horizon. So I would say let's do whatever is at our disposal. But I don't think that without a significant increase in pressure on Russia, we will not see any difference in the war so far.
Yeah, I interviewed President Zelensky last week and he said virtually the same thing as you. We need the weapons, we need the resources, we need the finances, and with that kind of pressure, we can be in a position to win. He talked about the AI and drone technology that they have, that it has advanced this conflict. But you said you want to be cautious of what President Trump is saying. One of the things that Donald Trump has said, he's demanding European countries stop buying Russian oil and gas. And I think we can show you just some of that purchase. In August, the EU's 5 largest importers of Russian fuels paid Moscow nearly 1 billion euros. That's mostly for natural gas, which isn't covered by sanctions. But nearly 40% of that is for crude oil, which is on the EU sanctions list. Hungary was the largest importer, purchasing for 416 million euros worth, and Slovakia was next with 276 million euros. Most of that was for crude oil. I mean, President Donald Trump said it today at the General Assembly in his speech. The Europeans are fueling the war that they are fighting, which he described as embarrassing. Would you call on European nations 3.5 years into this war to stop buying Russian oil and gas?
I would say we are doing that for all the duration of the war. My country has stopped purchasing oil and gas from Russia. We transferred to other resources from Norway, from the United States, from Arab countries. But obviously, we don't have any levers on our allies to do the same. We can only call on them. European Union is trying to exert more pressure through financial instruments they have at their disposal. But even that is quite often complicated. I believe we need a serious talk about how to proceed, what kind of restrictions vis-à-vis Russia we are going to apply, but also to other countries that are supporting Russia in their war. It's not just China or India or Iran or North Korea. There are some other countries through whom Russia receives some technologies that are prohibited by sanctions.
But do you find it outrageous that European countries continue, the likes of Hungary and Slovakia? I mean, Hungary is a supporter of Donald Trump. They've expressed a strong admiration for Donald Trump. When he is saying stop, why are they not stopping?
But I think it takes some time to transfer. For Czech Republic, it was probably easier because we already had the pipelines to Western Europe. It's not always the case with Slovakia or Hungary, but there are probably also some expectations that there will be a time sooner or later where some economic ties will be re-established. And probably Hungarian leader would like to keep these channels open for the future.
So are you saying they're hedging their bets because eventually if things are normalized again with Russia, they will have to go down the path of buying Russian oil and gas, so why sever the ties now?
Well, I believe they often talk about doing politics in all directions. They insist that we need to talk even to our counterparts and also not to cut all the links. We have a different view, but of course we need a collective approach because it doesn't look very convincing if one or two countries are going against the others.
President, you're urging caution right now. How do you see things heading for Ukraine and this conflict?
Well, I have a great admiration for Ukrainians because beyond fighting Russians on the ground, they are constantly calling for help, assistance, going around the world. Some leaders even dislike the approach of Ukrainian president because they see him always calling for money and equipment. But this is exactly the role that he should be playing because his country is at war. He needs to do whatever necessary to get the resources. I believe that there is still room to increase our military assistance. It is the room to coordinate our economic and financial measures against Russia. But we have to do it very quickly.
Mr. President Pavel, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. We're just talking to the Czech president there. We heard in the last hour or so President Donald Trump making that reversal on his position in Ukraine. He's spoken for the last few months about Ukraine having to make some compromises when it comes to territory. He now says with the right resources and support, Ukraine could win back that territory. We'll be here in New York following all the twists and turns. But from me and the team, goodbye for now.